To get started, this is the end goal. The point is specifications. This is class number 1 of 5 in our Specs 101 series that we're putting on this season for the Puget Sound chapter of the CSI. Our class sponsor today is Applied Building Information. And for those of you who don't know ABI, oops, just dropped this down a little bit. ABI is an independent specifications consulting firm based near Seattle, Washington, that provides project specification services to architectural firms, owners, general contractors, and manufacturers. The firm works closely with clients through all phases of development to document the products best suited to their design and performance requirements. Applied Building Information expands traditional specification services to bring higher value to the project team. So thank you so much to our sponsor today. And our speakers are actually going to be Beth Stroshane, CCS, who is the managing partner at Applied Building Information, and Heather Skeehan, AIA, who is the head of strategic design implementation at citizenM Hotels. So Beth Stroshane started in structural engineering, construction management, started on the contracting side, moved into specifications, where she has been for quite a while now, very well known in our industry, both locally and nationwide. She's also presented internationally as well. She owns her own company, and she, which is Applied Building Information, our sponsor today, which is at this point one of the largest specification firms in the country. And then Heather Skeehan is, she has worked as an architect, a contractor, and an owner. So she has a great overview of our industry and has seen specifications and drawings from many different sides, many different experiences. So she has really an amazing experience and perspective that you don't get from a lot of people. So without further ado, we're going to start off with our first speaker, Beth Stroshane. All right, so Beth, you can take it away.
Unmute yourself, Beth. Do it.
I mean, thank you, Ellen. If anybody doesn't know, writing specs is a group effort. Sometimes people who aren't there help you the most that they can. So part of what I wanted to start with is this is called Specifications 101. And what that means is that we assume that you don't know what's going on, and we assume that you're really excited, because that's what 101 is. Okay, clueless but excited. That's where we're at. So specifications, so we're going to start at the beginning. If you listen to the AIA, which part of the time you should, this is what specifications are. They're that portion of the contract documents consisting of the written requirements for materials, equipment, system standards, and workmanship for the work, and performance of related services. Okay, excellent. AIA is our first definition giver for specifications. And I click the button. Yes. Okay. Then our next is CSI, who's the Construction Specifications Institute. We should check in with them about what specifications are also. They're the written details for the work that need to be completed in a construction project. Okay. These details include information such as the scope of work, materials, and installation processes. Okay, we're getting closer, but both of those are still a little big picture for a 101 class. So what is a specification from Beth Stroshane at Applied Building Information? It's the 8.5 by 11 pages that work with the drawings to define what the contractor provides to the owner for the price. Okay, that's what contract documents are. It's this long word that means what does the contractor have to provide to the owner or they get sued. That's it. Okay, so then we're going to start breaking down those kinds of things. And then there's another big, scary word that everyone talks about, coordination. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay, and Heather will talk about the drawings later. So this is why we have two people. Okay. So what is a good specification, right? So also according to Beth Stroshane at Applied Building Information, it's one that delivers the owner what they paid for. Okay, so if the owner says, I want a truck, they could get any 4 of these. They could say, I want a red truck. Any 4 of them make that requirement. Red, Dodge, Ram, all 4 of those meet those requirements. Which one do you think the owner has in mind? Which one do you think the GC has in mind? Okay, now the reason that there's kind of this disconnect is because, has anyone had a child or was a child who asked their parents for $20 to go to the convenience store? All right, okay, that seems good. And the thing is if they went to the convenience store with $20 and they got to keep the change. Okay, so that's what happens in a construction project is the owner says, okay, this is what I want. The architect defines it and the contractor goes shopping. The contractor gets to keep the change if there is, ambiguity. So if the owner says, I want a red Ram truck, and the architect says, provide a red Ram truck. Okay, the contractor says said red Ram truck is going to cost you $60,000, right? If they can convince the owner that they thought this one is the one that they were talking about, then they get to pocket $25K. And in all fairness, they're going to use that $25K for where they forgot to provide pricing at some other point. So it's not like they get to keep the whole $25K. It's just, the way the process works. And part of the stuff that they have to spend the $25K on is the stuff that the owner didn't tell them that they wanted, or that the architect flat didn't draw. And so it's like, everybody kind of works it to the middle. But that's why specifications are important, is because if the owner thinks they're buying this and pay for this brand new $2,500, and what actually shows up on site 2 years later is the one that will mostly haul cattle, as long as you don't have to go more than 15 miles. So that's where you've heard the quote that disappointment is that gap between expectation and reality. So specifications help manage disappointment. Okay. So what is a coordinated specification? A coordinated specification is where the words match the picture, where the specification that I write, which is, the 8.5 by 11s, we talked about that before, match what Heather's drawings show. So coordinated is one of those, like, well, they're not well coordinated. Like, what does that mean? Okay, here's another thing that comes from children. Okay, I'm going to Starbucks and I ask my 18-year-old, what do you want from Starbucks? Or what do you want from the coffee shop? And she says, 32-ounce surprise bull blaster with popping pearls and light ice. And I'm standing at Starbucks. I'm looking at this. Icy ice is the only thing in the written portion that I actually see in this menu. So this is what uncoordinated documents feel like. Only it's not about disappointing my 18-year-old, because, parents disappoint their 18-year-olds pretty regular. This is about disappointing an owner who's spending $50 million on your services and has the ability to tell people that you are screaming incompetent and to never hire you again. So it's important that we get these coordinated. So just like there's the GC that may be playing the Ram truck game, okay, this is also a reality where the owner says, I want this thing. And the architect writes, here's what the owner wants. And they're like, this is what's currently available. Which one of these do you want? It's not that they refuse to buy popping pearls. They're not on the menu. So that's what uncoordinated looks like and feels like. Okay, so how do we get to a coordinated specification? It's one of those things that's going to stick in your head forever. Coordinating specs and drawings. It is just like playing Go Fish with a toddler. Okay. And this is no disrespect meant to anybody in this industry. Okay. How do you win at Go Fish with a toddler? You find all the matches. That's how you win. Doesn't matter whose pile they're in. Doesn't matter if you find all the matches and none of them are on the floor. So how do you get there? You say, architect, I have a spec. You have to read 600 pages to find out which fish I have. And then the architect says, okay, here's my 700 pages of drawings. Find my fish in those. So really what we do, and this is part of the process that, every spec writer has a similar kind of process of how do we play Go Fish with toddler? Okay, we play the cards face up. Like, okay, here's my table of contents. And these, the bluefish, they usually go in the tile section. Do you have any bluefish? You're like, yes, I have bluefish. Okay, how many bluefish? 4. Big ones and little ones. Okay, excellent. So we've got those matched. And then we move on to the next thing, which is, doors. Oh, I have big doors. Okay, got big doors. Little doors. Okay, doors that open and close and swing in and out. Do they open and close like this? They're like, yeah. Okay, overhead coiling doors. And there's a swing door? Yes, and there's a swing door. Okay, so we have an overhead coiler with a swing door in it. Oh, McKeon has those. Excellent. And if you call the ZESBA guys, they can explain it to you. Okay, so that's what CSI is all about. You know that it's the ZESBA guys and it's a McKeon thing. So that's where you're playing, lining up what the specifier knows of materials that are available with what the design teams knows the project needs, with what the GC knows is available. So that's where all the coordination comes in. And if we get to the end and there's matches, my specs, my words match the architect's drawings, match the GC's estimate, the owner gets what the owner paid for. And guess what? The owner's happy and everybody else gets hired again. That's the goal. So thinking about that, okay, Go Fish with a toddler. Think about the number of materials that are in a apartment building or a small school, and then multiply that by 1,000, and you've got, the new hospital at Children's. Okay, so it's thousands of materials. So what kind of, education would you need to be that good at Goldfish with a toddler and remember that many things and be that organized? Let's see, where do specifiers come from? Well, a large portion of them are architects, but just locally, the people I know personally, there's background in interior design, theater, engineering, contractors, technical writers, teachers, library science. We have an excellent specifier locally who was a kindergarten teacher. You might even know her. We had an excellent specifier who's an English major who now I think she's at HOK. The theater major is Mark Chavez. He did go to architecture after theater, but the theater still comes through if you've ever met Mark Chavez. So there's nowhere that baby specifiers come from. There's not. There's no class. There's no program. When I started writing specifications, 2 decades ago, almost disturbing, I tried to find a program. Many of you on this call may have tried to find a program, and this is what you found. So here's where, specifiers come from all over. different kinds of degrees, different kinds of things. So what makes someone thrive at specification? So if we're going to, import them from wherever, we need to get down to details of personality type and those kinds of things, and not just degrees, since there isn't a universal degree that says if you have this, then you'll know how to do this. Okay. Most architecture programs might have one class on specifications, and most of them have recently canceled it. So that's what's available. Okay, so this is what the personality things are that get you to specifications. You have to be visual, right? So that you can read drawings. You have to be able to listen so that you can figure out, I need a door that goes like this and like this in the event of a fire. You have to be collaborative because you have to be able to match what's on the drawings, what's in the specifications, what does the contractor think is in their estimate. And you're like, no, that doesn't meet the energy code anymore. That's really nice. You have to be a communicator, observant. You have to be a knowledge collector, attention to detail, right? There are people who can't make, line up 10 pieces of information in parallel structure. They wouldn't be a great spec writer. There's lots of awesome professions that they would be excellent at, maybe architecture, but not specifications. There's a huge amount of detail. And it was really funny. I'm playing with this, word cloud thing. And the first I put it in there and I didn't have these hyphens. And the thing that came out the most was problem. And what was the other one? But that was the most common word, problem. Like, oh, wait, no, we're not problems, we're problem solvers. Although if you talk to some other people in the industry, they might think differently. So all of these things are the things that you need if you want to thrive at being a spec writer. You have to be patient and teach and learn every day. You want to be objective. And if these are the things that kind of fit in your personality and you're still really interested in specifications, you should continue pursuing the profession because it's a lot of fun and I like it a lot and I've been doing it for a long time. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Heather, who's going to tell us about drawings and show you all of her fish and where to find them so that you will be better at Go Fish on your next project. And I have to stop sharing before she can share. I'm learning that.
Before I start running, did anyone want to ask Beth any questions while I contemplate adding fish to my PowerPoint at the last minute? Because that would be amazing. Otherwise, I can totally get rolling.
Okay. I think you're rolling. I will see. I will look in the thing and see if there's any questions.
Yeah, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to type them in the chat and I can interrupt a little bit later. We'll also have a Q&A at the very end.
Lovely. Thank you. Well,
Thank you.
Hello, team. Move that up. Everyone's happy. I actually never go into full presentation mode when I do presentations. It's the thing that drives my team absolutely bananas. So welcome to me driving you bananas as well. We're going to talk drawings. I am going to have way less fun pictures and way more real actual drawings pictures because, man, do we do a good job of making architectural drawings complicated to read. It's like you'd think we have a special class for that. So ultimately, what am I looking for? How do I get the info I need from them with those fancy learning objectives that basically understanding architectural drawings to discover items to be specified? I'm going to put a big flag that says that I am going to I'm basically going to show you architectural drawings, but holy cow, are there a lot of other types of drawings in a set of documents. In the project I'm going to show you guys, the contract document set, the contract drawing set is 700 sheets, and the architectural drawings are maybe a third of that. So it's a lot of them, but there's a ton of others. All of those other ones are like a different level of awesomeness. But what's nice is we use a lot of the same standards in terms of how we assemble our drawings. So once you learn how to read architectural drawings, and the mess those can sometimes be, you can kind of piece your way through all the other ones. So generally, we'll hit on what's a drawing. That's always a fun one, right? What's a drawing? How are the drawings ordered? What types of drawings are there? What are all those batshit symbols flying around? Basically, what information you can find where. Everyone's favorite stuff, details, doors, windows, schedules, all of those really fun, hard things. And then I'll touch really briefly on BIM because I know that's something that everyone hears 6 times a week. And there's some positives and negatives to it. And so we're going to glaze over it very, very quickly. It's going to be nice. So what are drawings? I like that, I like that you had multiple real life definitions, Beth. I hate the real life definitions of drawings because everyone gets into blueprints. I'll say that a lot of folks are used to hearing about blueprints when we talk about construction. What's cool is that blueprints are very cool colors and they are very messy. What's interesting now is that blueprint really refers to a process of copying stuff back in the day before the large scale printing machines. So really what we talk about when we mean drawings, and really when we say blueprints, is that drawings are the things that indicate the quantity and the configuration of stuff, whereas the specifications are about the quality and the products. That's very high level. And I will absolutely say that the drawings regularly try to steal the bits and pieces from specifications and say, okay, well, we'll talk about this thing though. We'll talk about this thing though. We'll talk about this thing though. Which is why all the stuff that Beth was talking about coordinating them and making sure they speak to each other nicely is so important. It is really easy to have things listed twice in different ways, or twice, but different things. It can get complicated really quickly. But basically, if you want to know how much it is, how it's configured, drawings are your guys. And like I mentioned, there's a lot of them. So knowing your way around them can be a challenge if you don't know how you're doing it. The good news is every project has, God, this is the world's tiniest thing too. This is why I've got multiple sheets up. Every project is going to have a title sheet. Oh, that's one of these. See, I don't even know where my title sheet is. Every project is going to have a drawing index. So you're going to always, if you really want to, you can always go straight to the drawing index and say, man, let me just go down all of this list and try to find the one drawing that I'm looking for amongst all of these 9,000 fire diagrams. Because one of those is bound to have something interesting. And dig and dig and dig. So there's always a table of contents option. Always an option there. Now, what's nice is that there's a cheat sheet on every set of drawings, which is that down at the bottom down here, you're going to have a little reference to all this information that's in here, which looks like this. And every one of your project team, many design firms, not all of them, many of your design firms will have a cheat sheet on one of your sheets that will explain how you navigate around. So if you're looking down at the bottom of your title block down here on your set of drawings, which I have to say is so much more useful when you have a big printed set on your desk that's this big, and you can just flip through the corners. But it'll have that set and it'll say, hey, if it says A, that tells you what discipline it is. If it says 0 next, that's your view type. So general or schedules, plans, elevations and details, et cetera, et cetera. Then it'll have the view type modifier to give you more information. And it'll have the sheet sequence right there. So there's always, God, there always should be. There should, we very much like it when there's a cheat sheet built into your drawings. So in this case, my architect was fabulous, put it right there in the first few sheets of the drawing set. Makes it very easy for me to say, what on earth does the T at the beginning mean? What on earth does the P at the beginning mean, et cetera. So I can always find it that way. Now, what's also interesting is increasingly we're using systems like this. So this is Procore. This is one of the drawing tools that I use. So even more so now, I spend a lot of my time, if you have a design team that happens to be using a tool like this, Like I love just searching for furniture. I apparently search for furniture a lot, and I'll just search for things. So this is another option that's way easier if your team happens to be using it. You can always find your way around right here. So that's the first thing you need to be able to do is hunt it down. If it's confusing for any reason or it's not matching up, a call to your architect is the best thing you can do, because if you're lost, I assure you they're lost too. There are national standards that exist out there. Like there's national CAD standards, AIA has standards, and that's great. But there's also like firm standards. So ZGF has slightly different standards than maybe Gensler would. And owners were really problematic. We have standards at citizenM that vary from country to country that we're working in. Microsoft has extremely specific standards. They say you will use these numbers, and then you end up with a drawing number that's like 6 digits long. It gets really enormous. So it's going to vary a lot. So I wouldn't worry so much about national standards, and I'd always hope that you have one of these in your project. It'll help you endlessly. So that's how you find kind of bits and pieces of stuff. And then once you're like, okay, so I know where to find the architectural drawings. I know where the civil drawings are. I know the basic kind of format of these are like basically the order of these things. The next thing is what types of drawings are there and what are they for? Yeah, all of them are all of them are going to be set up in basically the same way. So you're going to have a sheet that's going to look like this guy, and it's going to have this big area over here, which we call the drawing area, which will have the stuff. And it'll have this area off to the right-hand side, unless you're a weird firm who does weird things, off to the right-hand side, that'll have information about the project. It'll tell you who on earth this is for. It'll tell you the architect. There'll be a space for the architectural stamp. I'm going to zoom in on this here. There'll be a space for the stamp. And there we go. There'll be a project number and like the project. Often there'll be an address on it. It'll tell you the date this thing was issued, which is really useful. So you'll know if that's dated from 2017, maybe you're looking at an old set of stuff. And then down here at the bottom, it'll have the title sheet. It'll have the title of the sheet, and it'll have the your drawing number. So that'll always exist on every sheet that you go through. And then all this other stuff here will be all the other stuff that is you're actually looking for information on. So that's always going to look the same. And then when you zoom into a sheet, you're also going to have information. So like this is a set of informational pieces, but when you dive into a drawing set, let me go to one of these enlarged furniture plans. This will be fun. So I'll have the sheet over here. I'll have this information over here, and I'll also have in the drawing area information about the particular drawing. And that's going to have its location on the drawing, which tends to be based on a grid. So like roughly where it sits within that, although that's super inconsistent from design team to design team. At least there's a number, and it'll have a title of what it is. This is an enlarged furniture plan for the patio, which has no furniture. Nifty. And it'll tell you the scale of that drawing, so you know what you're looking at here. You're going to see this on every one of these drawings. So if, for example, I'm looking at this drawing here, it's number 1E, it's an elevation of what MR means. MR02 storefront, it's this scale. It tells you more information about where you can get to, but it'll tell you about that specific drawing. So this guy will tell you about meeting room. Thank you. Oh God, I was like, I should know the answer to this, and I don't. I swear I've seen this building before. So this will be your information about your sheet. This will be your information about your drawing. You'll always be able to find baseline information that way. And hopefully you have someone like Beth who can say MR means meeting room, because that can be really confusing otherwise, even if it's your project. And then there's all these different types of drawings that get made. Drawings and other stuff, by the way. Other stuff is really fun. It'll go from kind of biggest scale down to the most detailed. So you'll always have site plans of various different types, shapes, sizes, etc. It'll show you how the building sits on the site. You'll have floor plans floor plans are the things people are most used to reading and looking at. It talks about how the building is configured, where doors are, where windows are. You'll have a lot of information on that tied to quantities and space. You'll have your elevations. What does the building look like on the outside and also on the inside? So what does my wall look like on the inside over here? What does my exterior wall look like? There's lots of stealthy information that lives in these. In many ways, your interior and exterior elevations are a secret source of lots of information. Same with your wall sections, which will just take slices through the building and say, if I were to look at the inside guts of that wall all the way up the building, how does the architect think this is coming together with all the other disciplines tying in there in a perfect world? You'll have
this also
detail.
tells you where you find your fish. So your Division 7 fish are in wall sections.
They live in here. Your
Yes.
Division 7 fish are in wall sections. Your Division 9 fish are going to be in your interior elevations.
Yes.
You're also going to have sneaky Division 7 fish hiding out in your exterior elevations. That
Yes,
sometimes.
in that schedule in small point font, that's where they are.
Yeah, right up here. This is your favorite space.
Yep. There's 7 of them there.
There's a bunch of them. You'll have details too. There's going to be miscellaneous stuff that's like, how does this ceiling come together? How does this particular weird light fixture tie in with this elaborate bracket that comes together? And you're going to have, again, more and more sneaky stuff. So when I zoom in on one of these, let's zoom in on one of these guys. You can see tons of good stuff here. Stuff that's really going to be impactful for you guys on these drawings. You're going to have sneaky schedules like this. This is going to talk about finish, materials, different products they're expecting. You're going to have lines of annotations in your wall sections where they're going to call out the different parts and pieces of that wall. And they're going to say, I've got brick, and then I've got some insulation. And there's going to be argument about where the air barrier sits, but they're going to list an air barrier. They're not going to know where it goes, but they're going to list it in there. And there's going to be a vapor barrier, and there's going to be some studs, there's going to be some sheathing, and there's going to be some drywall, and they're going to show all those parts and pieces, and they're going to call them all out. Same thing with these details. There's going to be all these annotations along the side of those details. They're going to show you lots of good stuff. And then you get the really fun ones, which are just whole sheets that are just going to be schedules of information. And they are very, very dense, but they have lots and lots and lots of good information in them. So if I were to go to a component schedule, I'm going to see that I have, oh yeah, I'm going to have a bunch of finish numbers. I'm going to have manufacturer information in there, material information in there. This is where you can run into problems because they're listing the same stuff that's going to exist in your spec. My architect in this case is listing that there's this hardware group that's right here, that's 007, it's half full, there's a handle, it's even listing the style name and number. This is like actually big red flags for me because this is information that is living in 2 places now because I could pull up my specs and this would be information that would be there as well. And you really hope that they called their spec writer and said, hey, turns out it was 500, not 50. So that needs to update. But
my
these
red
are really,
flag is, what is matte chrome?
that's
that really a
fun,
finish?
it really is. For this
Wow.
product, it's really a finish. Yeah, it's, I know
And it's
fun.
pronounced Hayfula. And if you need help
Hayfula?
with that, it's Wick Temple.
Hateful. I like hateful a lot better. And I also like how the matte chrome holds fingerprints really beautifully.
Oh,
Oh no, it's terrific. So there's all these different types of things. Information is going to be scattered throughout them. Truly, it's worth going through and looking at all these. It sounds like a lot of time. Once you do it a few times, it gets a lot easier because there's a lot of repetition in these. Your wall sections, a lot of the same information is going to exist from wall section to wall section. You'll get a feel for it after a couple times, but do not skip reading annotations. It is amazing the product information we sneak into these. Like we're like, oh yeah, I actually listed this as red brick in this one detail here, and I don't see that anywhere else. So these are your favorite. This is the most important place ever. There's also a lot of symbols and stuff that we use in drawings that when you go through training, yeah, as opposed to spec writing, we have lots and lots of training in how to do this, good, bad, or indifferent. There's lots of symbols that we use that are very standardized, where we'll have little guys that look like this. We'll have these little things that look like this. We'll have little dash lines that go around stuff. So you're like looking at how it's going to, sometimes they'll look a little different. Like maybe they'll use an octagon or something somewhere. Maybe they'll use a square. This is where, again, a strong design team will tell you what all those symbols are. You can learn the basics of how to look around and say, you know what, this is pointing at that wall. That's going to be an elevation of that wall. And that's your general approach, but you can always confirm it. Oh, see, I hate saying always. You can usually confirm it in a drawing that's in a set of documents that talks about your symbols, and it tells you what everything is. Engineers are very, very good at including these as well, because they'll have weird symbols for like a light fixture versus a security camera versus a sensor of some kind. They'll have their own symbols and parts and pieces. This will tell you what all those things mean. And they'll also have all your abbreviations. So I bet MR is in here somewhere. If it's not, I'm calling Baskerville after this and saying, can you add MR to your abbreviations list? You don't have to memorize the alphabet soup that we use in architecture. And
if you do, they won't use the same ones in the drawings, so don't hurt yourself.
Yeah, don't do it. Don't learn it. Don't memorize it. It takes up space that could be better used for, childhood memories. Definitely don't waste the time. It always exists somewhere, and you can always have them produce it for you. Often you'll have a material graphics thing that will show it, say, we're generally using this hatch or this look to represent this material, although they're not always super consistent about that. So again, take as much as you can from that, but sometimes it will look different, which is why annotations are your friend. Because that was A001. Let me look at A001. Because I doubt if they're consistent about their materials. Oh yeah, they're not consistent. I can think of examples. So they will generally say, in general, I want my concrete masonry to look like this. My concrete will look like that. My precast will apparently just be white, which is not confusing at all. But they'll say what they're aiming for, so you can at least kind of get a graphic sense. But again, sometimes you'll get things that look different. So I'd always look at the text next to it. Yes,
because typically that first one is foam insulation.
Yep. This is why it's so important to just see what the design team has said they're using, rather than assuming from past projects. Because if you change architects, or worse, you change owners, sometimes we drive stuff like that too, which is great. Or you get a product from overseas. That's even more fun. So I'll dig a little bit more deeply into what some of this stuff looks like. Plans and elevations, these are about configuration and quantity of stuff. So I'll see, where's the building on site? I'll see how do all the parts and pieces come together? Where are doors? Where are holes? Where are, here's a revolving door. Where are my parts and pieces? I'll see this in my plans. I'll also have reflected ceiling plans, which is everyone's least favorite type of drawing, and shows what it looks like up there. It says, I've got a ceiling. I have it hatched in that way, which, they don't call it out, which I'm assuming is on this list as, it does, as gypsum drywall. So it's got a hatch that matches that. So it's got a gypsum drywall ceiling. It's got all of these dots and figures and little security camera things, which there's a little legend for what all those things look like on the reflected ceiling plan. So you don't have to remember that this weirdo looking thing is a security camera. You can see that it's, good. I was worried that security camera is going to be wrong. It'll say this weird looking thing is a security camera. So they'll tell you on each drawing what it is you're looking for. So you can see what everything's looking at there. Sometimes just these legends can tell you so much about the kinds of things that need to be specified, because you'll know that they're like, there will be 2x2 light fixtures. I will have 2x4 light fixtures. I'll have recessed cans, strip fluorescent light fixtures. You can kind of go down that list and say, I should have at least these things, because they're listing them in my legend. There's a really good possibility they'll show up. It could be a nice back check. Exterior elevations is what the exterior looks like. so often we'll put schedules like this, and it'll say things like, this is the number that we're referencing things. How about I just go to it? Let's go to overall floor plan, and I'll click on a random elevation. This is why I like Procore, because I just couldn't click through the drawings in a nice way. So it'll say, here's the finish number. Here's the type of material it is. So I've got a stucco system. Ooh. This is where there's lots of conversation with them about what do you mean by stucco system? In this case, they're listing the manufacturer right here on this list, including the style name and number, color, which is very lovely, including the color numbers. So there's a lot of information that lives within this that needs to live in the specifications and needs to coordinate with the specifications. So that's what they look like. Interior elevations are really, really similar. They're just looking at the inside in a flat 2D projection. So you're just saying, here's all these parts and pieces that live there. Here's all these notes. These ones tend to have less. Architects generally, even though these are extraordinarily important because it's how you experience a building in many ways, there's often less annotation on these, but a lot of interesting kind of visual notes on them, just visual graphical information. Like you're seeing a lot of hanging stuff on these drawings that is really useful. So I'm going to enlarge plans. So I'm, for example, going to click on one of these. So I've got these interior elevations to lobby. I'm seeing lots of differently shaped things hanging from the ceiling. I'm seeing lots of different types and shapes of tables. I'm seeing more really weird light fixtures. I'm seeing these doors. So you're seeing a lot of things in here that they don't have labeled, but are going to be labeled somewhere else. But you're also seeing that they're saying, hey, this thing here, whatever that is metal 003. So they are going to call out some things in here. So there's often a lot of these. A lot of them are very just graphic. So they're useful for understanding what they think it's going to look like. But sometimes it's just, I don't know, sometimes you're just drowning in information in these. And
this is one of those places where you find lots of fish that I'm like, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
So you make a note, what is the metal thing that you're calling metal 3?
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's
what
a column
do you
cover.
mean? Exactly.
And so that's where it helps a lot, just working through, making a list and seeing if you can make a match.
So sometimes I've worked with spec writers who have gone through and they'll have a printout of this and they'll like, yeah, I know what this thing is, and they'll do a highlight over it. I know what this thing is, and a highlight over it. I have no idea what this thing is. And they'll get to a point where everything's covered in yellow. It's gonna be a really interesting way to work. So that's interior elevations. Then you'll get mixed sheets, which have all different types and pieces. Owners love these. I'm gonna say that we're huge fans of these. Sometimes we will make more comments on these kinds of sheets because we're seeing things in different ways and parts and pieces. And so we like saying, yeah, but I actually kind of want all those orange things to be blue. I mean, I know it's just orange graphically, but I want it to be blue. And we'll say that in a weird place. So we can be really challenging as an owner. Details and assemblies are a whole series of drawings about how we expect the building to actually get built. So our wall sections are our jam. Your annotations are going to tell you so much about what we expect to be built. And often we'll have conflicting information from the specs. Air barriers and vapor barriers are one of the big ones. Sometimes we'll have a line that's in a place that we think looks nice graphically. And maybe that's not where the air barrier goes or where that particular piece goes based on that particular product that we're specifying. So sometimes you can get different kinds of information in these than is actual reality. If something doesn't make sense in these wall sections, raising your hand and speaking up and saying, hey, architect, design team, this feels weird to me, is hugely helpful. It can make an enormous difference. Don't be afraid to ask questions about these. It helps. It can only help.
And as a quick note, so see the little dotted lines with the square? So if you're not familiar with drawings, that essentially means pinch and zoom here and go to that page and it will show you bigger. So that's what those dotted lines mean.
Yeah, so we can show you that right here. So if I look at
right, so that all these dotted lines around here mean we acknowledge we drew this tiny. If you need to see it bigger to actually understand what's going on, go to this other page. So that's how the drawings link together.
So I'll go to a wall section that's one of these guys. So you'll have all those dashed lines and they'll say, hey, cool, here's a basic information about that assembly. If you want to see more, it'll live on sheet A322. And then I'll be able to zoom in and see a ton more information. And we'll have a lot more information about this is metal panel, this 3.5-inch Z-furring. See, there's that air barrier. Who knows which one of those lines they're pointing at? There'll be information in there that talks about all the parts and pieces that zoom in a lot more. So you always start big. You start kind of like a big scale, as in you're seeing the whole thing. And then you get more detailed and more detailed and more detailed until you're zooming into each layer of individual glass and its little mullion and all those little weird parts and pieces that we show as architects because we think it looks cool in a drawing. But we probably don't call out a whole lot of information. We just say window head. Yeah, we're going to see lots of standard details. So you'll see a lot of things that are like, here's a detail for the threshold. Here's a detail for the top of the window. Here's a detail for the jamb of the window. You'll get a lot of those. You'll get a lot of unique items, like here's this weird piece of casework that's going next to the bar because it's super weird and it's the only place we have it. And then just like this one right here that we were zoomed way into, you'll get systems. So I'll say, here's my metal panel system, and here's all those parts and pieces coming together. Here's my insulation, here's my this, here's my that, here's my on and on and on. So you'll see that full system and it tying together with other systems. In this case, you'll see how they expect the tie-in with that railing that goes around the top of the building. They actually call it out. There we go, metal rail, entire building. So they'll call that information out. So you'll see those systems coming together. If there's two systems that come together, there will be a detail of it somewhere. Thank God. And then sometimes GCs will do the same thing. We'll take information that comes from here and we'll piece it all together until we're like, yeah, so here's the parts and pieces that we're going to build in concrete. So more and more details get made by the different folks. So these kinds of drawings will get made down the line where they'll take the specification information and all these cool drawings, and we'll make more really focused drawings that say, I'm going to build this concrete stair. And here's all the parts and pieces. So we just like we strip down the information until it's just those few things. That's nothing there. Schedules, because sometimes you just need a list. Because if I had to draw my shopping list every time I went to the grocery store, it would take way longer than if I just listed, I need eggs and bacon and milk. So you'll get these sheets that'll look like this. And generally there'll be some kind of a numbering system that the architect will have, a description of the material. And then in this case, which I think makes Beth and I just a little cautious, you'll also get tons of details about the material supplier and see, look at that beauty. All of that nice information. There we go. Door schedules are always fun for this. You'll get lots and lots of information about what is, if it'll finish loading, there we go. What is the manufacturer? What is the material? What is the style name and number? What color is it? We tend to put a lot of information into these that will get duplicated in your specifications. Very much worth talking to your team about.
And usually we won't duplicate them. We will look at this and say, okay, you're listing these 5 bits of information, but you're not listing 6 and 7. Yes. So a classic example, and we'll see if Heather can find it, is carpet or carpet tile. Okay, so they'll always list the manufacturer and the color.
Mhm.
They won't necessarily list the installation pattern and configuration. I mean, or if it's glued down or stuck down. I mean, so those are the things where as a spec writer, you go see what's there and then say, okay, so is this legit stuff or is this like stuff you made up from last time that you haven't fixed yet? Because sometimes we coordinate with that and then they change it. That's where that patience thing comes in. So
Huge.
that's where you want to coordinate with what's there, not repeat.
Similar with like door schedules, we'll list information about how we expect it to be black and a 2.5-inch door and it's a 90-minute door, but we're not going to list hinges. We're probably not going to list lock sets. Definitely we like having those live somewhere else. Lock sets freak everyone out. And if I had carpet tile on this project, I would 100% pull that up. That's a great example of we just say it's blue and it starts over here, but all the rest of it lives as it should in the spec. So we'll see similar things.
Blue, but no, it's glued down at an ashlar and all of that stuff. That's what gets picked up in the specs.
Totally. So those are some overviews of some of the big types of drawing types. Lots and lots of stuff that lives within that. One of the crazy things that you'll run across increasingly is BIM. I have heard many of my colleagues say the specs are great, but how does the BIM work? Because BIM is very much how we build the sheets now rather than a replacement for stuff. So we'll have this 3D model. It'll have all these parts and pieces. I'll produce all of these great drawings from that model. So it'll slice and cut and look at it in different ways. I'll be able to link in information, possibly. The theory is that you can tie it really beautifully to your specs, though I've never worked on a project like that. One day, maybe I would like to do that. But it's very much still the way we use it is very visual and about just how do I build a digital version of this building before I have to build it in real life. So that's kind of what BIM is. There's some more information in here. And I guess just some important things to remember. Man, project teams love the drawings. And we're really scared of specs, and specs to us make really good door stops. Those books hold the doors open and closed very, very nicely. But in the case of inconsistency, the specifications take precedence. If my spec says that carpet is blue and it's carpet tile, and I have a note somewhere in the drawings that say it's pink and it's sheet carpet, the specs rule, just because that's how it works. So
sometimes,
in many cases, it should. And it depends on your contract and it depends on what Division 1 says, but often what's said in the specs is really, really, really important. And if they're different, and if there's something that the contractor likes better and is cheaper, like Beth's example of the red truck, we're going to use what's better and cheaper for us, or we're going to send a change order to the owner and say, oh, the spec says it's this, and that's $100,000 more. So let's give them what's in the spec. So those two things singing are really critical, and it can be very difficult, this is that patience thing, to get your architects to take the time to really plug in with you on the spec, but it makes a world of difference for handling inconsistencies, because sometimes you're not capturing all the things in the annotations, or the architect is changing the annotations. Sometimes there's too much information in the detail annotations. We're really good at that. Helping them edit can be great. Things change constantly. Not capturing those changes in both the drawings and specs is a huge problem. And then on the spec side of things, there's like code references and alternates, and all of those things can lead to inconsistencies that if there's a difference, it's money to the GC and money to the owner too, just not in a positive way. So those inconsistencies are, these are some common causes of them. TBD is my favorite. TBD costs so much money. I've got a list of some of these do's and don'ts. I think we hit on some of them. The biggest thing is like read the annotations and ask questions. Asking questions of your design team, even if it seems like a dumb question, like this didn't look like stucco in this detail. I mean, asking that question in a design meeting recently saved us a ton of money because it didn't want to be stucco. It wanted to be metal panel. sometimes asking that information is really helpful. And then there's how the GC uses it. We're going to use the drawings as a GC. If I have my GC hat on, we're going to use the drawings so much. We're going to do quantity takeoffs from them. We're going to develop sequences of work from them. We're going to break up the drawing sets into bid packages. We're going to create shop drawings. We're going to track changes. We're going to walk through them with the inspectors. And you're going to hopefully not use your specifications as the doorstop, because the specifications have critical information in there. Owners like me are really demanding of our GCs to say, what's in the specifications? Please review the specifications. Let's talk about the specifications. So those of us who are getting into that field are pushing for that reminder that specifications are really important. Owners, we really like the drawings. Owners dig drawings. We want the pretty pictures, we want the 3D views, and we want like the basic information that goes into our pro formas and make sure that the money works. So like gross floor area, the number of rooms, the number of toilets, those are the kind of things we're interested in. So there's like 7 drawings in the package that we're going to really reference over and over again. A lot of it, like details and wall sections, meh. We want them to work and we want them to meet our requirements and we want the building to not leak, but we leave the rest of it to everyone else. We're mostly going to look at the drawings and 3D views. And I guess the last piece is that there's some great resources out there for learning more. UW's construction management certification course has a drawings and specs learning thing that's separate, and it rocks. I encourage architects and contractors and everyone to take this class, and it's all online now, which is extra awesome. So I would totally check that out. WSU, I think, does a similar one. I'm just less familiar with it. A lot of the construction management courses out there have that super, super great course. AIA, we occasionally do continuing education around drawings and specs. Less around specs. This is why I'm glad that you all do this stuff. We don't talk about specs that often, but sometimes we will have someone come in and talk about drawings and talk about technical drawings and talk about cool ways to do drawings differently. And then like page turning, sitting down and going through the drawings with your design, going through your drawings with your design team, rockin' good way to learn about projects and learning about drawings. Because they will, the way that they talk about it, and they'll say, you know what, let me skip all of these 14 pages, they don't matter. This is where it's really important. You'll get a sense from them of what's important and where the real juice is in a set of documents. So definitely take that time and sit down with them and see where the drawings sing to them, because sometimes that'll tell you things that are really important or that they don't have all worked out. Like maybe they'll totally avoid talking about the parapets because they have no idea.
Yeah, take note of any of the sheets they say don't matter and double check that later.
If you have a big open sheet, maybe that's a problem. Like I've got a sheet, I mean, I know why this sheet is big and empty, but if I look at this and see how it's big and empty, and I'd say, okay, what's missing? Because that kind of freaks me out. Like you're just saying there's nothing there, but are you sure? Because it'd be really great to not have a big thing that's missing in there. Or like, this is big and empty. Like, are we sure? Are we sure there's nothing in there? That's a lot of space when everything else has tons of information in it. So sometimes empty sheets or empty elevations. Empty elevations are a big problem too. Or if you have like this has no notes on it. This has very few notes. Kind of makes me wonder if it's all the same notes or if there's something else that I'm missing. So truly, if they say something doesn't matter, make a note and maybe double check. Yeah, there's a lot to drawings, but at least they're like, but hopefully they end up singing well with the specs, because that's a perfect world.
Yeah. So every square that's in the drawings should have something in the specs. So that's the thing that you want, that's the go fish game that you're playing. So go through your drawings and mark up the things that you think they are, and then go see if you can find them in the specs. And if you can do that, great, you're winning. And if you can't do that, your toddler's disappointed and you need to play another couple rounds.
Exactly. Your architect is your toddler, 100%.
No, everybody's all on the same page. You know, just the project is the toddler, and everybody's happy when the project wins.
I love that. Your project is an excellent toddler.
It is. Sometimes it runs off and hurts itself, and we're all just trying to get it to the end.
All right, so before we jump into the Q&A, I have a couple quick questions and also a note. One, I know we're already at 1 o'clock, so if anybody needs to jump off, but you have a question, please type it in the chat. This is being recorded, and then we'll follow up with everybody to get your AIA numbers if you want credit, and then also to give you the YouTube link. Second, Heather and Beth, I know we're running a little long. Do you have a few minutes to stick on and answer questions?
Super easy for me.
Yep.
Fantastic. All right, so the first question is, can you talk a little bit about the process between aligning and reconciling specs and drawings? Actually, this is a very multi-part question, so a lot of different things that you guys can answer on. Any of the common issues, misalignment. I know Heather spoke on them a little bit already, but Beth, what do you look for first? Heather, what do you normally see are missing or issues? And is there anything that you're seeing through your roles in various stakeholders here, where one group is really looking for something that they're not getting from the specs or from the drawings, maybe the owner's not getting from across the board? So that's a very, very open question, but off you go.
So kind of one of the ways that we've dealt with this is we use Bluebeam a lot. And like Heather said, her drawing set is 700 pages. I mean, that's enough to make your head explode. You can't even remember what you saw on page 1 by the time you get to page 30. And so what we'll do is go through with and just draw boxes on them. Okay, I'm going to draw a box for and write stairs in it. Stairs, 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 stairs. Okay, so then when I get done, I can sort by what I wrote in that box. Oh, I have 12 stairs. Okay, let's click through those stairs, and they have their stair list that is 4. Okay, so let's go find the other 8 stairs. I mean, so those are the things. Or, okay, I've got a metal panel section. Excellent. They're talking about metal panel. Okay, I've got metal panel here and here and here and here and here and here. They told me there's only one metal panel, except for some of them are squiggly and some of them are flat. So that's what we'll do. That's how I systematically will go through drawings without losing my mind is, okay, call them what they are. I mean, this is Go Fish with a Toddler playing against myself, you know, solitaire, and say, okay, how do I classify them so that I can find the pieces is how I'll go through that. And if I can't match them, then that's something I mark as the status of a design team meeting, and we go through them. And like those big squares that Heather showed on the floors, like, what is that? Oh, that's a carpet tile. Okay. Well, what is that one that looks just like it? Oh, that's a floor mat that's inset in the floor. Yep. Okay. Well, what's this one that looks just like that? Oh, that's a hole. Okay. So that's where it's like, ask the questions. If it's not screaming obvious, then ask the question.
I think that's interesting because I do a similar, as a GC and as an owner now, I actually do a similar approach with things that I know cost secret money is kind of the way I think about it. Things that are going to require special inspections, things that are going to require deferred submittals to the city, things that are going to require an expert who does a whole nother set of details on them. And there's 2 places I look for a sheet. Sometimes there's a drawing list on the drawings that says these are the things that require special inspections or deferred submittals. There's a section within Division 1 that'll list the same stuff. Then I'll go through the specs and I'll look at each one of the spec sections in that little zone, and I'll look for special inspections. I'll look for deferred submittals. I go through it in that way. And then once I've got my list there, I'll take a spin through the floor plans and say, this is a weird stair. I bet you $100 that thing's going to need a deferred submittal to the city, because I'm used to saying that being deferred submittal. So that'll be like secret money bucket number 1. And then I'll go through it in that way. And then I'll say, I found 47 things in the drawings that I think are deferred submittals, and I've got 46 of them listed. What's missing here? So I do that a lot with deferred submittals and special inspections. I have found lots of buckets of secret money in that way. Just from like, oh, we got to hire a whole nother guy to do this work, because either there's a note or there's a whatever, or there's something somewhere that that I need to pay for.
All right, so the first question we have on here is, how important is it for product manufacturers to alert spec writers if specs for the products are inconsistent?
I love that personally. I've had some vendors reach out to me on this project that I'm working on and say, hey, FYI, they're listing literally a product number was listed incorrectly. And it has saved us tons of hassle by the time we get to actually receiving the receiving information from the contractor. We're able to fix it way ahead of time, so they're able to submit it right the first time rather than back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I love it. Now we have a really direct connection with a lot of our vendors. I've also enjoyed it when I got pings from a vendor as an architect too. I thought that was really helpful. So please tell us if, I like it. I like when someone says you gotta screw up here, it'd be great, fix it. I think it's really helpful.
It's always good to have someone who's nice to me call me up and tell me I'm a dumbass.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and this is one of those things, and I'm sure that someone on the call has told me, you have a problem in your specs. And then they call me up 2 months later and say, it's still a problem in your specs. Oh, but that's a different one. So keep at it. It is important. And understand that I, as a spec writer, have 200 jobs that are in various stages of completion. So trying to trade it out is like the most obscene game of whack-a-mole you have ever found. So if we don't get it all traded out in the right place in a year, please forgive us. It is not that we don't care. It's just that we are trying to find, it's like, seriously, again?
Yeah.
Thank you, Don Richards.
I noticed there's someone from Guardian Glass on this. There's also the issue. Yes, I also noticed that none of us are specialists in this stuff. I've had a lot of glass guys say, hey, you're showing this thing, you're showing this type of glass, but you're showing it like 3 times bigger than that glass can really be. And we've had to change the specification on the glass because I want it to be a 10 by 10 sheet of glass. And this is not going to work with that glass. And I
want a Ram truck with 1 million towing capacity. You're like,
yes, exactly. And so having those specialists who like live and breathe the technical information about a product or a type of stuff. We can't, there's just too many products out there. We can't be specialists in all of it. So that saved me a number of times early in a project when I still had the ability to change it at the right number, at a not a change order scale number. That was very nice.
Beth, this question is for you. So with the drawings, when you get started, what is your process? Do you look through all of the drawings when you get started with the specification, or do you look at specific portions of that spec, starting with schedules or anything like that? Is it all equally important, or are you limited on time and you only look at specific things, and what are they?
So nobody can deal with 700 pages at one time. So the way that I'll look at drawings is going to depend on when in the job it is. So one of the first things I'll ask is, which of the drawings are most complete? They're like, oh yeah, the exterior elevations are totally rocking, interiors, they're a little sketchy still. Okay, so then I'll focus on exterior. So starting with big stuff and then going down to little stuff. So the big things about what kind of cladding we have and if there's any materials and what are the colors of the metal stuff on the outside of the building. Because the other thing that you'll also find is you'll know that metal panel 1 is silver and curtain wall 1 is sparkly silver and curtain wall 2 is dark charcoal metallic. Like, are those all the same color? They're like, no, those are 3 different colors. Okay, well, we need to give them a name that we can use consistently. And so those are the things that we'll try to find. I match the big fish first. So stairs, cladding, curtain wall, the stuff that the contractors are going to buy first, I hit that stuff first. And then, get to the next round of details. Big systems like, looking at the door schedule, you get a whole bunch of fish all in one place. Do you have any overhead coiling doors? No, we don't have any of those. What is this thing on your drawings? Oh, that overhead coiling door. So that's the thing that we'll go through. So go to the big stuff, find the big stuff first, and then, next round, find the medium fish. And then the third round, you find the little bitty fish. So that's the process that we go through.
Great. And then Heather, this next question is for you. So you talked a little bit about how special inspections and deferred submittals are important to you as the owner in the specifications. From your kind of viewpoint as an architect and a GC, what is most important for those roles, or what was most important for you when you were in those roles?
From a GC, those were always things that impacted the schedule. If I needed to hire a guy to do special engineering, holy cow, does that take a long time. So there was schedule implications there. So those were really important. It's like Beth said, I'm going to be buying stairs really, really early. So because it takes a long time to do the drawings for them, engineer them, fabricate them. So I'm going to look for that stuff early. As an owner, what's really important is, or as an architect, I mean, what's important is those are the things I'm noting down because I know that my structural engineer is only contracted to me to do X level of design. They've explicitly said to me, I'm going to do your building, but I'm not going to engineer your stairs. I'm not going to engineer these connections. So those are things that are really important to get engineered. And someone at some point is going to say, well, yeah, but how does that hang onto the side of the building? And I'm going to have to be able to point to something and say, not my job. Ultimately, well, not my job, and seriously hire a good professional to do it. Those are the 2 things I need to say as the architect.
And really the question is not, okay, how does this hook to here?
Yeah.
The question is, when this falls off here and hits the street and kills people, whose insurance pays?
Yep, exactly.
And if there's not an answer, it's always the architect unless the architect says it's that guy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what those things are. It's like, okay, like the clips that hold on, everybody likes lots of fat insulation now. Okay, who designs that clip? So when this cladding falls off and kills somebody, who designs that?
Whose insurance pays for that? Yeah, exactly.
I guess that has to be, a delegated design because the clip guy does, and we don't know who's buying the clips. Mm-hmm. So that's where it's like, okay, whose insurance gets hit? And then everybody pays attention.
So are there, does anybody have any questions you want to ask live? You can unmute yourself. Not seeing anybody unmuting. So if you want to do that, go ahead. But so the last thing while people consider whether they're going to unmute or not, Beth and Heather, can you each give kind of one thing that when people walk away from this meeting today, what is the one takeaway you want them to take with them?
If it doesn't make sense, it does not mean you're confused. There is lots of stuff in this industry that don't necessarily make all the sense when you look at them. So ask questions and continue to evolve to make the industry better. So just because, and if someone says this is how we've always done it, that is not an answer. Like
I think-
nobody wears the same underwear they wore 25 years ago. Nobody wears the same jeans. Nobody eats the same food. We should not be doing things the same way. It's like, really? You got nothing better? So the way we've always done it is not an answer.
100%. I mean, really, really similar thing. It's that idea. There's no stupid questions, and it's because if it doesn't make sense to you, it might not make sense to the architect either. And if it doesn't make sense to you, it's probably not going to make sense to the 22-year-old project engineer who gets that thing that they have to find out how to buy from the GC's perspective. So asking those questions early, holy cow, because if you can, it makes everyone's life easier. The earlier those questions get asked, the cheaper they are, which is awesome for us as an owner.
Awesome. All right, well, if there's no other questions, we're gonna end up. Thank you so much, Beth and Heather, for speaking today. This is really interesting and we appreciate it quite a bit. We'll be in touch with all of the attendees for AIA credits, also to give you the link to this. And if you have any follow-up questions, just let us know. And this is your last and final chance to ask questions before you hang up. So,
Okay.
all right.
Thanks for
Thank you,
coming,
everybody.
everybody.
Well
Great.
done. Thank you.
Thank you all
Thanks, that
so
was great.
much.
Thank
Good
you all.
luck, team.
That was great.
Great job.
Cheers all.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah.